The 7-year-old son of the widowed businessman hadn't eaten in 2 weeks, until the new housekeeper arrived and changed everything. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The 3-story mansion stood majestically on Elm Street in Beverly Hills, one of the most upscale areas in Los Angeles. Its tall walls of imported stone and wrought iron gates protected not only a property valued in the millions, but also the secrets and sorrows of a shattered family. Inside, Carrara marble floors reflected the golden light from crystal chandeliers, creating an atmosphere that should convey elegance and comfort, but had become cold and silent like a mausoleum for months. Gabriel Henry was only 7 years old, but his dark brown eyes carried a sadness that should not exist in a child of his age. Thin as a wounded bird, he had lost almost 10 pounds in the last 2 weeks, a dangerous weight for his small frame. His ash-blonde hair, inherited from his mother, fell messily over his pale forehead, framing a face that had once been chubby and rosy with health. "Gabriel, sweetheart, you need to eat something," pleaded Richard Henry for the 100th time that Monday morning. The 42-year-old businessman, owner of Henry and Associates, felt completely powerless in the face of his son's stubborn refusal. His graying temples betrayed the stress of recent months, and the Italian suits he once wore with pride now felt too heavy on his shoulders, burdened by worry. The boy simply shook his head negatively, fixing his gaze on the garden through the panoramic window of the dining room. Outside, the rose bushes that his mother Caroline had lovingly planted continued to bloom, indifferent to the pain that had taken over the house. Gabriel spent hours watching those flowers, as if he expected his mother to emerge from among the red and yellow petals to hug him once more. "Dr. Richard, perhaps it's best not to insist today," murmured Mrs. Johnson, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for 15 years. A woman in her 60s, she had witnessed Gabriel's growth since he was a baby, and now watched, distressed, as the boy she loved like a grandson withered away. The pediatrician said that forcing him might make things worse. Richard ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that had become habitual since his wife passed away 11 months ago. Caroline had been his anchor, the person who balanced his workaholic nature with the attention the family needed. Without her, he felt like he was sailing in a stormy ocean without a compass. "Mrs. Johnson, call Dr. Smith again. Maybe he can recommend a different specialist, someone who—" His voice broke. "I don't know what else to do. We've tried psychologists, nutritionists, even a child psychiatrist. Gabriel simply refuses to eat anything." The house, which once echoed with Gabriel's crystal-clear laughter and the songs Caroline hummed while cooking, now breathed a heavy silence. The grand piano in the living room had remained closed since Caroline's passing. She had been a talented pianist before dedicating herself entirely to the family. The smiling photographs hanging on the walls seemed to mock the current sadness, reminders of times when happiness was a natural state in that residence. Gabriel was a bright child, with an above-average IQ and an impressive photographic memory. Before his mother's death, he could recite entire poems after hearing them just once, and showed exceptional artistic skills for his age. Now, however, those qualities seemed to have turned against him, allowing every painful memory to imprint itself with cruel clarity in his young mind. "Daddy," Gabriel whispered for the first time in days, still looking out the window. His voice was weak, almost inaudible. Richard immediately moved closer, kneeling beside his son's chair. "Yes, my love. What do you want to tell me?" "Mommy planted those flowers for me. She said that when she wasn't here anymore, I could look at them and remember her love." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "But if I eat, does that mean I'm forgetting her?" Richard's heart shattered once more. How could he explain to a 7-year-old the complex concepts of grief, memory, and survival? How could he make him understand that living fully was the best way to honor his mother's memory? "Gabriel, sweetheart, your mom would never want you to hurt yourself because of her," Richard tried, carefully choosing each word. "She loved you more than anything in the world and wanted you to grow up strong and healthy." But Gabriel had already disconnected again. retreating into his internal world where the pain seemed more bearable than reality. He got up from the chair and slowly walked toward the garden, his bare feet making almost imperceptible noise on the cold floor. Mrs. Johnson watched the scene with tears in her eyes. She had raised 4 of her own children and helped care for dozens of kids from the extended family, but she had never felt so powerless. "Dr. Richard, the boy is consuming himself with sadness. It can't continue like this." "I know, Mrs. Johnson, I know." Richard leaned on the solid wood dining table, the same piece of furniture where the family used to gather for meals, filled with lively conversations and plans for the future. "But what more can I do? I've tried everything within my reach." The housekeeper hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Dr. Richard, do you remember my cousin Helena from Asheville? She worked for years caring for special needs children. She has a patience that seems endless. Maybe a housekeeper?" "Mrs. Johnson, we need medical help, not another employee." "With all due respect, doctor, but you've already sought medical help. Sometimes a child needs something that isn't learned in school." Mrs. Johnson straightened her shoulders, showing a determination she rarely exhibited. "Helena, she has a special way with difficult children. She raised 5 children alone after becoming a widow, and one of them had problems similar to Gabriel's." Ricardo looked again at his son, who was now sitting on the garden floor next to the rose bushes, his small hands gently touching the petals. The image broke his heart, but it also sparked a glimmer of hope. Perhaps Mrs. Johnson was right. Maybe Gabriel needed something that the diplomas and expensive offices of São Paulo couldn't offer. "When can she come?" he asked, his voice heavy with a desperation he could no longer hide. "I can call her today. Helena always said she would be available if we needed her." Mrs. Johnson smiled for the first time in weeks. "She's a good woman, Dr. Ricardo. If anyone can help Gabriel, it's her." That afternoon, while Gabriel continued his silent vigil in the garden and Ricardo tried to focus on real estate contracts in his office, a phone call would change the course of their lives. The warm voice of Helena on the other end of the line brought with it the promise of better days, although neither of them could imagine how profound the transformation would be. The light blue van stood out completely from the understated elegance of the imported cars that usually passed by Elm Street. It was Thursday, 3 days after Mrs. Johnson's call from Asheville, and Helena Smith was disembarking from her 500-kilometer journey, carrying 2 battered leather suitcases and a wooden trunk that had belonged to her grandmother. At 58 years old, Helena had sun-kissed skin from California, calloused hands that told stories of hard work, and a warm smile that seemed to naturally brighten any room. "My goodness, Mrs. Johnson, what a house this is!" exclaimed Helena, adjusting the colorful scarf that protected her gray hair from the Californian wind. Despite her admiration, there was no intimidation in her voice, just the genuine curiosity of someone who had grown up in simple adobe homes and was amazed by urban grandeur. Mrs. Johnson rushed down the steps of the main entrance, her eyes shining with emotion. "Helena! I thought I would never see you again, cousin." The 2 women embraced for a long time, and for a moment the formality of the mansion gave way to the warmth of the Californian mountains. "How is the boy?" Helena asked directly, picking up her luggage. "Mrs. Johnson told me over the phone, but I want to know everything." A child who doesn't eat is a child screaming inside. From the top of the internal staircase, Gabriel watched the commotion. Hidden behind the carved mahogany railing, he studied the unfamiliar woman with the natural distrust of a child who had learned to protect himself from disappointments. Helena looked nothing like the other people his father had brought in to help him, psychologists in dark suits and psychiatrists in white coats who spoke to him as if he were a little problem to be solved. "Gabriel is up there," Mrs. Johnson whispered, discreetly waving to the boy. "He always observes first. It takes time for him to trust new people." Helena lifted her head and met the boy's curious eyes. Instead of waving or trying to call him, she simply smiled and said loudly, "Hi, Gabriel. I'm Helena. I came from the foot of the mountains to meet you." I brought some special things in my luggage, but I will only show them when you want. Gabriel tilted his head, intrigued. Most adults immediately tried to get him to come down, talk, or worse, eat something. But Helena simply continued carrying her bags, softly humming a tune he didn't know, but that sounded familiar and comforting. Ricardo emerged from his office when he heard the voices. Wearing a navy blue dress shirt and tailored pants, he visibly contrasted with Helena's rural simplicity. For a moment he hesitated. Could this woman really help his son when the best specialists in São Paulo had failed? "Good afternoon, Dr. Ricardo," Helena greeted, extending her hand firmly. "Mrs. Johnson told me a lot about you and Gabriel. I'm sorry for the loss of your wife." "Thank you," Ricardo replied, noticing the sincerity in Helena's brown eyes. There was something about her, a serenity, a quiet confidence, that calmed him despite his initial reservations. "I must confess that I am skeptical about unconventional methods. We've tried everything. I completely understand, Doctor. You are a father, desperate, and anything that doesn't come with a diploma hanging on the wall seems risky." Helena smiled with understanding. "But sometimes children need simple things that we forget amidst all the complications. Can I see the house, especially the kitchen?" As Mrs. Johnson led Helena through the main rooms, Gabriel quietly descended a few steps to get a better look. The mansion's kitchen was a spectacle of modernity. Black granite countertops, brushed steel appliances imported from Germany, and a central island that could serve a banquet. But Helena slightly furrowed her brow. "It's beautiful, but it feels like a laboratory," she commented, running her hands over the cold surfaces. "Where's the stove? I mean a real stove, not this induction thing. There's a gas stove over there in the corner, but Mrs. Caroline preferred to cook on the cooktop," Mrs. Johnson explained. "And spices, fresh herbs, wooden utensils?" Helena opened some cabinets, finding only sophisticated equipment and processed ingredients. "Mrs. Johnson, tomorrow we are going to the farmer's market. A kitchen without soul doesn't feed anyone properly." Gabriel descended a few more steps, fascinated by the conversation. His mother had indeed preferred modern equipment, but he vaguely remembered afternoons when she complained that something was missing in her cooking, something she couldn't quite define. "Dr. Ricardo," Helena turned to the businessman, "I need you to understand one thing. I will not force Gabriel to eat. I will not use emotional blackmail or psychological tricks. I will just cook, and if he wants to participate, he will be welcome. But he needs to eat. He's already lost too much weight, the doctors are concerned about." "Doctor!" Helena gently but firmly interrupted him. "A child who doesn't eat due to trauma won't eat under pressure. They will eat when they feel safe, and when food once again represents love, not obligation." That first night, Helena settled into the maid's room on the ground floor, near the kitchen. The space was simple yet comfortable, with light wooden furniture and a window overlooking the backyard garden. She carefully organized her belongings, placing some photographs of her children and grandchildren on the dresser, and next to the bed, a worn Bible and a handwritten recipe book. Around 9 in the evening, when the house had already fallen into its usual silence, Helena went down to the kitchen. Gabriel, who had been suffering from insomnia since his mother's death, heard soft noises and decided to investigate. He found Helena preparing something that exuded a completely different aroma from anything he had experienced in recent months. "Hi, Gabriel," she said without turning around, as if it were natural for him to appear. "I'm making sugar bread for breakfast. My grandmother always said that a house without the smell of fresh bread isn't a home. It's just a house." The boy cautiously approached, watching Helena's skilled hands knead the dough. She worked with rhythmic, almost meditative movements, humming a tune that spoke of green valleys and rain nourishing the earth. Can I watch?" Gabriel whispered, his first voluntary interaction with someone in weeks. "Of course, sweetheart. You can even help me if you want. But only if you really want to. No obligation at all." Gabriel pulled up a stool and climbed on, keeping a safe distance from the food but fascinated by the process. Helena didn't ask about his refusal to eat, nor did she try to convince him of anything. She simply continued working, explaining each step as if she were chatting with an old friend. "You know, Gabriel, did your mother like to cook?" The boy nodded, his eyes shining with contained tears. "She made chocolate truffles every Friday. She said it was our special tradition." "How lovely. I bet she put a lot of love into those truffles." "She did. She always said that food made with love nourishes not just the belly, but the heart as well." Helena paused, kneading for a moment, and looked directly at Gabriel. "Your mother was a wise woman. And you know what? I believe she is still putting love into food through the people who care about you." Gabriel considered these words in silence as he watched Helena finish preparing the dough. When she covered the bread with a dish towel and set it aside to rest, the boy asked, "Helena, did you also lose someone important?" "Yes, sweetheart. I lost my husband when my children were still young, and years later I lost a grandson your age." Helena wiped her hands on the embroidered apron she had brought from California. "It hurts a lot, doesn't it? Sometimes it feels like the pain will never go away. How do you manage to eat anyway?" Helena knelt down to be at eye level with Gabriel. "At first I couldn't. I thought eating was betraying their memory, as if I were moving on and leaving them behind. But then I learned something. We honor those we love by living our best lives, not by destroying ourselves." Gabriel remained silent for a long moment, processing those words. Finally, he whispered, "I think I'm afraid of forgetting her." "Oh, my angel," Helena smiled tenderly, "a mother's love is never forgotten. It stays right here." She gently touched the boy's chest, "and it grows stronger every time we allow ourselves to be happy." When Richard came down to get a glass of water, he found Gabriel and Helena quietly talking in the kitchen, illuminated only by the oven light. For the first time in months, his son seemed present. He wasn't smiling yet, but his eyes had a spark of curiosity that had been absent for a long time. The next morning, the aroma of fresh bread awakened the entire house earlier than usual. Gabriel didn't touch the food, but stayed in the kitchen while Helena prepared breakfast, asking questions about the ingredients and watching every movement with fascinated attention. It was a small but significant beginning, the first step of a journey that would change not only Gabriel, but the entire Henry family. The Friday morning sun filtered through the leaves of the jasmine tree when Helena went out to explore the garden, carrying an enameled metal watering can she had found abandoned in the back shed. Gabriel watched her from the window of his room on the second floor, intrigued by the peculiar behavior of the new housekeeper. Unlike the other maids who had passed through, Helena didn't seem impressed by the grandeur of the property. Instead, she walked through the garden as if evaluating each plant, each flower bed, whispering words that Gabriel couldn't hear from up there. "Good morning, beauties," Helena murmured to the rose bushes that Caroline had planted with such care. "You seem a bit sad, don't you? It's been a while since anyone has really talked to you." She knelt by the main flower bed, her experienced hands gently touching the dry soil around the roots. "Water they give you, but you lack affection, you lack conversation." Gabriel rushed down the stairs, his curiosity overcoming his usual morning lethargy. He found Helena watering the plants with careful movements, but the most surprising thing was that she was actually talking to each one of them, as if they were old friends. "Helena," he called timidly, "why do you talk to the plants?" She turned with a warm smile, showing no surprise at the boy's presence. "Hi, Gabriel. You're up early today. I talk to them because my grandmother taught me that plants are like people. They need attention, affection, and conversation to feel loved." "But they can't hear you," Gabriel approached, still skeptical but fascinated. "Are you sure?" Helena pointed to a rose bush that looked more vibrant than the others. "Look at this one. Here, I bet your mother used to talk a lot with her, right?" Gabriel's eyes widened. It was true. That was exactly his mother's favorite rosebush, the one she tended to every morning, sharing her plans for the day, her worries, her joys. "How do you know?" "Plants hold the energy of those who care for them with love. This one is stronger because it still feels your mother's affection." Helena gently touched one of the blooming red roses. "You know what I think? I think your mother still takes care of them in a different way, through the people who love you. Throughout the morning, Helena turned her exploration of the garden into an informal botany lesson for Gabriel. She identified plants he didn't even know existed on the property: wild mint growing among the stones, basil that had spread naturally, and even a small guava tree hidden behind the shed. Gabriel, did you know your family practically has a natural pharmacy right here in the backyard? Helena picked some mint leaves and offered them for him to smell. Mint for stomach aches, lemon balm to calm down, boldo for the liver. The boy inhaled the fresh aroma of the leaves, feeling a vague memory forming. My mom sometimes made tea when I wasn't feeling well. Of course she did. A good mother knows the remedies of nature. Helena placed the leaves in a small wicker basket she had brought from home. And you know what else? These little plants can also be used to season food, adding special flavor to dishes. Richard watched the scene from his office window, trying to focus on the company's financial reports, but constantly distracted by the interaction between Helena and Gabriel. It was the first time in months that he saw his son genuinely interested in something, asking questions, actively participating in a conversation. "Dr. Richard," Mrs. Johnson entered the office carrying a tray with coffee. "Did you see? The boy has been in the garden for 2 hours. 2 hours! Since the lady of the house passed away, he has never stayed in one place for so long without being restless." "I see. Mrs. Johnson, it's surprising." Richard accepted the coffee cup, but his eyes remained fixed on the window. "She really has a special way with children." Outside, Helena had convinced Gabriel to help her clean a small abandoned flower bed in the back of the property. "You know what we can plant here, Gabriel? A vegetable garden. Cherry tomatoes, lettuce, green onions, parsley. Just imagine picking fresh herbs to use in the kitchen." "But I don't know how to take care of plants." Gabriel hesitated, his small hands dirty with soil for the first time in months. "No one is born knowing, my dear. We learn by doing, making mistakes, trying again." Helena handed him a small gardening trowel. "And I will teach you all the secrets my grandmother passed on to me." As they worked side by side, Helena began to share stories from her childhood in Asheville, of the afternoons spent in her grandmother's garden, learning that each plant had its own personality, specific needs, and growth times. Gabriel listened, fascinated, absorbing not only the information about gardening, but also the simple life philosophy connected to nature that Helena represented. "Helena," Gabriel asked after a period of concentrated silence, "why did you come to take care of me? You have family in California, your children." Helena stopped digging and sat on the grass, inviting Gabriel to do the same. "My children are grown. They have their own lives. And you know what? When Mrs. Johnson called me to tell me about you, I felt I needed to come. Sometimes we are called to help someone. It's like a request from the heart. Do you believe my mother asked you to come?" The question caught Helena by surprise. She looked at the boy, seeing a precocious maturity in his eyes that broke her heart. "I believe that the people we love never completely leave us, Gabriel. Maybe your mother did find a way to bring me here." During lunch, Gabriel once again refused to eat, but for the first time he didn't immediately leave the table. He remained seated, watching Helena savor the plate of pasta that Mrs. Johnson had prepared. "Helena," he suddenly said, "can you teach me how to make mint tea, like my mom used to?" "Of course, my angel. It's very easy. Do you want to learn now?" Gabriel nodded, and for the first time in weeks, he voluntarily headed to the kitchen with a purpose. Helena took the mint leaves they had picked in the morning and taught Gabriel how to wash them carefully, boil the water to the right temperature, and let the leaves steep for the appropriate time. "The secret," Helena explained as Gabriel watched the leaves dancing in the hot water, "is to do it with love and patience. Your mother knew that." When the tea was ready, Helena served 2 cups. "Do you want to try?" Gabriel held the cup between his small hands, feeling the aromatic steam rise to his face. For a moment he closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. "It smells just like Mom's," he whispered, his eyes filling with tears. "Then she is here with us," Helena said softly. Gabriel brought the cup to his lips and took a small sip. It was just tea, but for him, it represented so much more. It was a bridge between the past and the present, between longing and the possibility of new beginnings. It wasn't solid food, but it was the first nourishment he willingly accepted in 2 weeks. Richard, who had come down to check on his son, found the scene in the kitchen, Gabriel calmly drinking tea while talking with Helena about the different properties of medicinal plants. The relief he felt was so intense that he had to lean against the doorframe. "Dad!" Gabriel called him, a small smile playing on his lips. "I made mint tea. Do you want to try?" As the three enjoyed the tea in the sunny kitchen, Helena carefully observed the dynamic between father and son. She noticed that Richard, despite loving Gabriel deeply, he didn't know how to connect with him after the loss of Caroline. The successful businessman was lost in the unfamiliar territory of single parenthood, especially dealing with the grief of a child. "Dr. Richard," said Helena when Gabriel went outside to water the plants they had planted, "can I make a suggestion? Gabriel needs to feel that you are present too, not just concerned." "I am present. I'm here every day, trying. Being present isn't just about being in the same house, Doctor. It's about being emotionally available, participating in the little things that matter to him." Helena pointed to the window, where Gabriel was carefully watering the new plantings. "When was the last time you got your hands dirty with him? When did you play together without talking about food or doctors?" Richard reflected on Helena's words, recognizing the painful truth in them. Since Caroline's death, all his interactions with Gabriel revolved around concerns about his nutrition and health. He had forgotten to simply be a father, to enjoy moments of connection without a medical agenda. That afternoon, for the first time in months, Richard left the office early and joined Gabriel and Helena in the garden. His tailored clothes got dirty, his hands scratched by the thorns of the rose bushes. But when he saw Gabriel's genuine smile as he taught him to plant lettuce seedlings, Richard understood that Helena was right. His son's healing involved much more than just making him eat. Helena's second week at the mansion brought discoveries that completely changed everyone's understanding of Gabriel's condition. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when the boy had an unexpected reaction during the snack that Helena had prepared. Cheese puffs that filled the house with an irresistible aroma. Gabriel had approached the kitchen, drawn by the familiar smell, but when Helena offered him a still warm puff, he violently recoiled, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "No, I can't," Gabriel shouted, running to the garden under the light rain. "I can't eat! I can't!" Helena immediately followed him, finding him kneeling in his mother's rose bed, sobbing desperately. She knelt beside him in the wet soil, ignoring the rain soaking her grey hair. "Gabriel, my dear, what happened? Tell me what you're feeling." "I wanted to eat the puff," he sobbed, his words interrupted by irregular breathing. "I wanted to, but when I try to put it in my mouth, it feels like it will hurt, like something terrible will happen. It's like my body won't let me." Helena hugged the boy, feeling his thin body trembling against her chest. There was something more there, something that the doctors hadn't identified. "Gabriel, tell me something. Do you remember how you felt when you ate before your mother got sick?" "I liked eating. Mom made chocolate truffles, pizza, chocolate cake." Gabriel sniffed, trying to calm down. "But after she got sick, food started to taste strange. And when she died, I can't anymore. It's like food is poison." In that moment, Helena understood that Gabriel wasn't just rejecting food out of sadness. He had developed an extreme sensitivity, possibly related to the trauma of loss. She had seen this before in her grandson Lucas, who after his father's death in an accident developed sensory aversions that doctors took months to properly diagnose. "Gabriel, do you remember what food smelled like when your mother was in the hospital?" The boy hesitated, as if accessing a painful memory. "It smelled different. Dad brought takeout because he didn't know how to cook, and the smell was strong, strange. I ate because I had to eat, but I didn't like it anymore." Helena nodded, the pieces of the puzzle fitting together in her experienced mind. And now, when you smell food, does your body remember that bad time? That's it. Gabriel pulled back slightly to look into Helena's eyes. That's exactly it. But I don't understand why this happens. That night, after Gabriel fell asleep exhausted from the emotional episode of the afternoon, Helena called an urgent meeting with Richard and Mrs. Johnson. They sat in the living room, the same one where Caroline used to play the grand piano, and Helena explained her observations. Dr. Richard, Gabriel isn't just rejecting food out of tantrum or sadness. He has developed what we call traumatic sensory aversion, Helena explained, her hands gesturing to emphasize the seriousness of the situation. His brain has associated the act of eating with the traumatic period of your wife's illness and death. Richard leaned forward, finally hearing an explanation that made sense. But the doctors we consulted never mentioned this, because they were looking for obvious physical or psychological problems. This condition is more subtle, more complex. Helena took out a notebook where she had written her observations. Gabriel told me that during the last months of Mrs. Caroline's life, the household's eating routine changed completely. Take-out food, different smells, irregular hours, tense atmosphere. My God! Mrs. Johnson covered her mouth with her hands. It's true. I noticed that the boy was eating less and less, but I thought it was just worry about his mother. His brain recorded those smells, textures and flavors as signals of danger, of sadness, of loss, Helena continued. Now every time he tries to eat, his body reacts as if it is in danger again. Richard ran his hands over his face, feeling a mix of relief for finally having an explanation and guilt for not realizing it sooner. How did I not see this? How did I let my son suffer for so long without understanding what was happening? Doctor, you were suffering too. When you're in the middle of a storm, it's hard to see what's happening around you. Helena leaned in to gently touch Richard's arm. The important thing now is to know that there is a solution. What kind of solution? Helena opened her recipe notebook, revealing pages and pages of handwritten notes. We are going to recondition Gabriel's relationship with food. Start from scratch, with completely new textures and flavors, in an environment that has no traumatic associations. But the current kitchen is beautiful. But for Gabriel, it represents the time when your lives turned upside down. Helena looked around the elegant room. We need to create a new space, with new energy, where he can build positive memories related to food. Mrs. Johnson remembered something important. The former music room of the lady, it's next to the kitchen, has good ventilation and plenty of natural light. It's been closed since Caroline passed away, Richard completed, his voice heavy with emotion. I couldn't go in there. All her things are there, the piano, the sheet music. What if we transform that space into something that honors her memory, but also allows Gabriel to create new positive associations? Helena suggested carefully. An experimental kitchen where he can learn, play, and connect with food in a playful way. The proposal generated a heavy silence. For Richard, touching the music room meant directly confronting his own pain, accepting that life needed to go on. For Gabriel, it could represent a chance for a fresh start. Helena, Richard spoke slowly, do you really believe this can work? Dr. Richard, I worked with my grandson Lucas for almost a year to overcome a similar condition. It's not quick, it's not easy, but it is possible. Helena stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden, where the plants Gabriel had helped care for thrived even in the darkness. Gabriel is an intelligent and sensitive child. If we create the right environment with patience and love, he can regain the joy of eating. And what if it doesn't work? What if changing things around Caroline makes everything worse? Helena turned to face Richard directly. Doctor, with all due respect, it can't get worse than it is now. Gabriel is withering away, not just physically, but emotionally. He needs to see that you are also willing to heal, to move forward honoring your wife's memory, but not being paralyzed by it. The next morning, Gabriel woke up to find Helena in the kitchen preparing a special tea, a blend of chamomile, lemon balm, and a touch of honey that she had created specifically to calm the nervous system. The aroma was completely different from anything he had ever smelled before, soft and comforting. "Good morning, my angel. How did you sleep?" "I dreamed about Mommy." Gabriel sat at the table, automatically accepting the cup of tea. "She was in the garden, taking care of the flowers, and she told me I didn't need to be afraid." "And how did you feel in the dream?" Gabriel took a sip of the tea, reflecting, "Calm. For the first time in a long time, I felt calm." He looked at Helena with curiosity. "Did you talk to Daddy last night? I heard you two talking." Helena smiled, admiring the boy's sharp perception. "We did. About you, about how we can really help you." "And what did you decide?" "That we are going to create a special place just for you, where you can learn to enjoy food again, at your own pace, in your own way." Helena sat down next to Gabriel. "But for that, we need your cooperation. Would you be willing to try something new, even if it's scary at first?" Gabriel held the cup between his hands, feeling the comforting warmth. For the first time in months, someone was offering a solution that didn't involve pressure, emotional blackmail, or medication. It was a proposal for partnership, for working together. "I can try," he whispered, his voice filled with a fragile but genuine courage. "But you promise you won't force me to eat things that make me feel bad?" "I promise, Gabriel. We'll take it slow, respecting each of your feelings, each limit." Helena extended her right hand. "Partners?" Gabriel shook Helena's hand, sealing an agreement that would change not only his relationship with food, but with life itself. It was the first conscious step toward healing, taken not by external pressure, but by his own choice. Saturday dawned sunny as Richard finally gathered the courage to open the double mahogany doors of Caroline's former music room. That space had remained untouched for almost a year, like a sanctuary preserved in time. Gabriel held Helena's hand tightly, his eyes wide as he entered the room that held so many precious memories of his mother. The room was spacious and bright, with two large French windows opening to the backyard garden. The Steinway grand piano still occupied the center of the room, its surface covered with a fine layer of dust that danced in the morning sun. On the walls, shelves filled with sheet music coexisted with photographs of the family and happy moments. A violin rested in its open case on a side table, just as Caroline had left it the last time she played. "Daddy," Gabriel whispered, his voice echoing in the reverent silence of the room. "Do you remember when Mommy played that song about little birds? She always said I was her favorite little bird." Richard felt a lump in his throat, but forced himself to respond. "Of course I remember, son. It was Für Elise by Beethoven. Your mother played it every night before you went to sleep." He approached the piano, his hands trembling slightly as he touched the dust-covered keys. Maybe we can keep the piano here, even after the renovation." Helena watched the interaction between father and son with sensitivity, realizing that this moment was crucial for both of them. "You know what I think? I think Mrs. Caroline would be happy to know that this space will be used to help Gabriel heal. Music and food are ways to nourish the soul, aren't they?" Throughout the morning, the three adaptações, Carolina, Caroline, Ricardo, Richard, Dona Helena, Mrs. Johnson, São Paulo, Los Angeles, manjericão, basil, ervas frescas, fresh herbs, Dona Helena, Mrs. Johnson, Dr. Ricardo, Dr. Richard, café, coffee, jardim, garden, cozinha, kitchen, cookies, de chocolate, chocolate chip cookies, conversas, gastronômicas, culinary, conversations, caminho, path, mãe, mother, pai, father, mãe, mother, pai, father. Gabrielle and Richard worked together, carefully removing Caroline's personal belongings. Each sheet of music was lovingly flipped through, each photograph evoking a memory that Gabriel shared with growing enthusiasm. It was as if, by speaking about his mother in a positive context, he was processing his grief in a healthy way. "Look, Helena!" Gabriel showed a photograph of himself at 5 years old. covered in flour next to Caroline in the kitchen. This is from the day Mom taught me how to make chocolate chip cookies. I made a terrible mess, but she said the best recipes always come with a little mess. How lovely, my dear. And do you remember the taste of those cookies? Gabriel closed his eyes, focusing on the memory. They were sweet, but not too sweet. And they had a hint of vanilla that Mom always added. His expression slightly saddened. I wish I could make cookies again, but I'm scared. What if we started really slowly? First just smelling the scents, then touching the ingredients. No rush at all. Richard listened to the conversation while carefully packing Caroline's sheet music. He was discovering aspects of Gabriel's personality that he had neglected during the months of focusing solely on the eating issue. His son had an exceptional emotional memory and an artistic sensitivity that he inherited from his mother. "Dr. Richard," called Helena, "could you help us measure the space? I want to plan where we will put everything in the new experimental kitchen." The three spent the afternoon sketching improvised floor plans on sheets of paper, Gabriel contributing creative suggestions about the furniture layout. He wanted a low countertop where he could work comfortably, open shelves so he could see all the ingredients, and a small round table near the window for culinary conversations, as he called them. "Helena," Gabriel asked while coloring the drawings with colored pencils, "do you think my mother would approve of these changes?" Helena stopped drawing and looked directly into the boy's eyes. "Gabriel, your mother loved you more than anything in the world. She would do anything to see you happy and healthy. I'm sure she would not only approve, but would be cheering for everything to go well. But what if I can't? What if even with the new kitchen I can't eat? Then we will try something else, and then another thing, as many times as necessary." Richard joined the conversation, kneeling beside his son. "Gabriel, I made many mistakes these past few months. I was so worried about getting you to eat that I forgot to simply be with you, to listen to you, to understand you." Gabriel threw himself into his father's arms, a long and tight hug that sealed an emotional reconciliation between them. "I missed you too, Dad. It wasn't just Mom who died. It felt like you had gone away too." The boy's confession hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. He realized that in trying to protect Gabriel from pain, he had emotionally distanced himself, depriving his son of the paternal support he needed the most. "I'm sorry, my son. I'm really sorry. I promise that from now on, I will be truly present." On Monday, Helena arrived accompanied by 3 professionals she had hired in Los Angeles. A carpenter specializing in custom furniture, a decorator who worked with therapeutic environments, and a technician who would adapt the space to Gabriel's specific needs. "Mrs. Johnson," said the carpenter, a middle-aged man with a Midwestern accent, "are you sure you want a countertop that is only 70 centimeters high? It's very low for an adult to work." "That's exactly the idea. Mr. John, this kitchen is for a 7-year-old to feel like the star, not for adults to bend down to it." Helena showed the drawings that Gabriel had made. "Everything here needs to be at his height, within his reach." Gabriel watched all the preparations with fascination, giving input on colors, suggesting modifications to the design, feeling truly part of the process. It was the first time in months that he showed genuine enthusiasm for something related to the future. "Helena," he said during lunch while watching the workers, "do you think that when the kitchen is ready, I will be able to eat for real?" "I think you will be able to do much more than that, my dear. You will have fun cooking, discover new flavors, and create your own recipes." Helena smiled confidently. "And do you know why? Because you are braver than you think." During the renovation, which lasted a whole week, Helena implemented a special routine with Gabriel. Every morning, they spent an hour in the garden, taking care of the plants and harvesting fresh herbs. Gabriel had become a little expert at identifying spices by smell, even though he still couldn't taste them. "Look, Helena, the basil we planted is flowering." Gabriel proudly pointed to the small white flowers that were starting to bloom. "That means it's happy, right? It means it is being well cared for by someone who understands its needs." Helena picked some leaves, offering them for Gabriel to smell. "How about we use these little leaves when the new kitchen is ready?" "I can try," Gabriel replied, a response that had become his favorite phrase. It was an expression of cautious hope, a willingness to grow while respecting his own limits. Richard, who had reorganized his schedule to be more present during the renovation, watched in amazement at the transformation not only of the physical space, but mainly of his son. Gabriel had gained a few grams, not from eating more, but from being less anxious, more hopeful. "Helena," Richard said one afternoon, while they were having coffee on the porch and watching Gabriel play in the garden, "I don't know how to thank you for all this. You brought my son back. Dr. Richard, your son was never gone. He was just hiding behind the pain, waiting for someone to have the patience to find him." Helena adjusted the scarf that protected her hair from the wind. "And can I tell you something? You are also coming back. You are allowing yourself to be a father. Again, not just a provider and protector." On Friday, when the renovation was completed, Gabriel entered the new experimental kitchen with his eyes shining with excitement. The space had been transformed into a cozy and functional environment, with colorful cabinets in soft shades of blue and yellow, light wooden countertops at the perfect height for him, and a small central island where he could work alongside Helena. Caroline's piano had been repositioned in a corner of the room, surrounded by green plants that Gabriel had personally chosen. It was a way to keep his mother's memory alive in the space, but harmoniously integrated with the new function of the environment. "It's perfect," Gabriel exclaimed, running to explore every detail. "Look, Dad, there's even a special stool for me to reach the high shelves. And this little corner here," Helena pointed to a cozy area with colorful cushions, "is for when you want to take a break, read about cooking, or just think." That night, Gabriel fell asleep more peacefully than he had in many months. The next day would mark a new phase in his recovery, with a space created especially for him, respecting his needs and honoring his possibilities. The experimental kitchen represented much more than a renovated environment. It was a symbol of new beginnings, hope, and the love of a family determined to heal together. Sunday dawned with a different aroma in the Henry mansion. Helena had woken up before the sun and prepared a special breakfast in the new experimental kitchen, not to be consumed, but so Gabriel could experience the sensation of being in an environment where food was celebrated, not feared. When the boy came downstairs, still in his pajamas, he found Helena organizing colorful ingredients on the low countertop, each in small glass containers that looked like culinary jewels. "Good morning, my chef," Helena smiled, wearing an embroidered apron she had brought especially for Gabriel, small, colorful, with drawings of smiling fruits and vegetables. "How about we get to know our new kitchen properly?" Gabriel approached cautiously, his eyes scanning every detail of the transformed space. Morning light streamed through the French windows, illuminating the light wooden countertops and reflecting off the glass containers filled with colorful spices. It was like stepping into an enchanted world where cooking became art. "Helena, can I touch the ingredients?" Gabriel asked, timidly extending his hand toward a container of crystal sugar that sparkled like diamonds in the light. "Of course, my angel. This kitchen is yours. Here you can touch, smell, and explore textures with no pressure to eat anything." Helena took a small amount of crystal sugar in the palm of her hand. "Feel how it is? What does it remind you of?" Gabriel gently touched the crystals, rolling them between his fingers. "It feels like beach sand, but smoother." His eyes lit up with a discovery. "And it makes a little noise when I rub it." "That's right. Each ingredient has its personality, its way of being." Helena picked up another container, this one with flour. "And this one, how do you think it feels?" All morning, Gabriel explored textures, smells, and colors without any pressure to taste anything. Helena had prepared a true sensory lesson, presenting basic ingredients as if they were treasures to be discovered. The softness of flour between his fingers, the sweet aroma of vanilla, the rough texture of brown sugar. "Gabriel," Helena said when she saw him completely absorbed in exploring a container of cocoa powder. "Did your mother like to cook?" "She loved it." Gabriel looked up, a small mark of cocoa on the tip of his nose. "She always said that cooking was like painting, but with flavors instead of colors." What a beautiful comparison. "And do you remember any special recipe from her?" Gabriel's face clouded slightly, but not with the usual panic. It was a gentle, nostalgic sadness. "She made a chocolate cake that smelled like heaven. That's what she used to say. 'Gabriel, this cake smells like heaven.'" Helena felt a pang in her heart, understanding the depth of the connection Gabriel had with his mother's culinary memories. "And if one day, when you feel ready, we tried to make a cake that smells like heaven, not to eat, just to smell?" Gabriel considered the proposal, thoughtfully stirring the cocoa powder with a small wooden spoon. "Do you think I could do it?" "I am absolutely sure, but only when you want, at your own pace." Richard appeared in the kitchen around 10 in the morning, dressed casually, jeans and a polo shirt, a rare sight for someone used to seeing him always in a suit. "How are the chefs? Can I enter the kitchen or do I need special permission?" Gabriel laughed, the first genuine laugh he had emitted in months. "You can come in, Dad, but you have to wash your hands first. It's the kitchen rule." "At your service, Chef Gabriel." Richard went to the small sink specially installed at the ideal height for Gabriel and ceremoniously washed his hands. "Done. Now can I meet the magical ingredients?" Helena watched the interaction between father and son with growing satisfaction. Richard was learning to enter Gabriel's world, to speak his language, to respect his rhythms. It was a remarkable evolution for a man who just 2 weeks earlier could only express worry and despair. "Dad, smell this." Gabriel offered a container of dried herbs they had picked from the garden. "It's the basil we planted together. Elena said it has the power to make any food happier." Richard inhaled the aroma, closing his eyes theatrically. "Wow, it really smells like happiness." He knelt down to be at eye level with his son. "You know what else smells like happiness? Seeing you smile again." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Johnson, who brought a tray with chamomile tea for everyone. "Sorry to interrupt, but what a joy to see you three here working together. Mrs. Johnson, you need to smell this basil." Gabriel ran to her, offering. Gabriel enthusiastically held the container. "It's like the plant is laughing." The housekeeper inhaled the aroma and smiled widely. "It really smells like joy. The whole garden has been more beautiful since you started taking care of it." During lunch, Gabriel maintained his refusal to eat. But for the first time in weeks, he stayed at the table throughout the meal, excitedly sharing his discoveries in the experimental kitchen. He described textures and aromas with surprising eloquence for a 7-year-old, showing that his relationship with the ingredients was transforming from fear to curiosity. "Elena," Gabriel said while watching the adults eat, "why do you think I can touch and smell the food, but I can't eat it?" The question revealed impressive self-awareness. Helena responded with the honesty that always characterized her conversations with Gabriel. "Because your little body is protecting you from something it associates with pain. It's like there's a very careful guard inside you who wants to make sure you're safe before letting the food in." "And how do I convince the guard that it's okay now?" "By showing him slowly that food can be a friend again, that it can bring joy instead of sadness." Helena leaned closer to Gabriel. "And you know what else? That guard will start to relax when he sees you having fun in the kitchen, creating good memories." On Sunday afternoon, Gabriel asked to make his first recipe, not to eat, but to create. He wanted to mix ingredients and see what happened, like a little scientist exploring culinary chemical reactions. "I want to make a blend that smells like a happy day," Gabriel announced, climbing onto the special stool that allowed him to reach the entire counter. "What a wonderful idea! And how do you think a happy day smells?" Helena asked, providing various containers of spices. Gabriel closed his eyes, concentrating. "It smells like the garden in the morning, with a little bit of Mum's cake, and also like summer rain." Working alongside Helena, Gabriel created his first blend, ground cinnamon, which reminded him of Caroline's cakes, fresh mint from the garden, and a few drops of vanilla extract. The result was a unique and comforting aroma that he named Happy Day Blend. "Helena, can I keep some of this blend? For when I'm sad?" "Of course, my dear." "Let's put it in a special little jar, just for you." Helena set aside a small glass container with a colorful lid. "And you know what else? Whenever you want, we can create other scents. Good memories perfume, courage perfume, love perfume." Richard watched the whole scene from the sofa in the living room, pretending to read contracts, but actually observing the magnificent transformation of his son. Gabriel was reconnecting with creativity, with the joy of experimenting, with the possibility of creating something beautiful with his own hands. When night fell, Gabriel fell asleep holding the small jar with his aromatic creation, a gentle smile on his lips. It was just the first day in the experimental kitchen, but it had already produced a fundamental change. Gabriel had regained the pleasure of creating, of experimenting, of relating to ingredients without fear. Helena stayed awake late, jotting down in her notebook every reaction, every progress, every small victory of the day. She knew the road ahead would still be long, but the signs were encouraging. Gabriel was building a new relationship with cooking based on curiosity and creativity, not obligation and anxiety. In her last note of the day, she wrote, "Gabriel is learning that cooking can be a form of art, expression, and self-love. The guard inside him is starting to lower its vigilance. Tomorrow we will try the next step, creating edible textures without the pressure to consume." The Tuesday of Helena's third week in the mansion began differently. Gabriel woke up earlier than usual and went down to the experimental kitchen even before Helena arrived. Richard found him there, sitting on the floor next to Caroline's grand piano, holding the small jar with his Happy Day blend and whispering something inaudible. "Gabriel, are you okay, son?" Richard approached cautiously, recognizing the signs that something important was happening in his son's complex mind. "Dad, I dreamed about Mom again." Gabriel looked up, his eyes shining with a new intensity. "But this time it was different. She was here in the kitchen cooking, and she told me something very important." Richard sat down on the floor next to his son, ignoring the fact that his Italian silk pajamas were getting dirty on the cold floor. "What did she say, my love?" "She said she's not sad because I don't eat. She's sad because I stopped living." Gabriel hugged the jar of spices against his chest. "And you know what else, Dad? In the dream, I could smell her chocolate cake, but not the smell that scares me. It was the good smell from when I was little and happy." Richard's heart raced. For the first time, Gabriel was talking about his mother without despair, processing his grief in a seemingly healthier way. "And how did you feel in the dream?" "I felt free, like a giant weight had lifted from my chest." Gabriel stood up and walked to the kitchen counter. "Dad, today I want to try making Mom's cake. Not to eat, but to smell. To remember her in a good way." When Helena arrived at 7 in the morning, she found father and son in the kitchen, Gabriel flipping through a handwritten recipe book that he immediately recognized as belonging to Caroline. "Good morning, everyone. You started the day early today," Helena greeted, immediately noticing the different energy in the room. "Helena!" Gabriel ran to her, his eyes shining with a determination he hadn't shown in months. "I want to make Mom's chocolate cake today. Will you help me?" Helena exchanged a meaningful glance with Richard, who nodded. Gabriel was discreet. It was a delicate moment. Gabriel was ready to take an important step, but it needed to be handled with extreme care. "Of course, my chef. But let's make a deal. We start slow, feeling each ingredient, and we stop whenever you want. Is that okay?" "Sure. I'm not scared anymore, Helena. Well, I'm still a little scared, but it's a tiny fear that fits in my pocket." Gabriel made a gesture, showing something minuscule between his fingers. Throughout the morning, the trio worked together to prepare Caroline's chocolate cake. Gabriel read the handwritten recipe with a clear and firm voice, as if reciting a sacred poem. Each ingredient was presented to him like an old friend reunited, the cocoa powder that made brown clouds when sifted, the eggs that created golden foam when beaten, the flour that turned into white snow when added to the mix. "Gabriel," said Helena when it was time to taste the raw batter to adjust the sugar, "would you like to try just a little bit of the batter? You don't have to swallow it. You can just taste it on your tongue." Gabriel hesitated, his hands trembling slightly. It was the moment of truth, a direct confrontation with his greatest fear. What if I can't do it? "Then you can't, and that's okay. We can try again another day," Helena replied with absolute calmness. Richard held his breath, watching his son face his inner demon. Gabriel dipped the tip of his pinky finger in the chocolate batter, slowly bringing it toward his mouth. He stopped a few centimeters from his lips, closing his eyes, as if gathering courage. "Mom," Gabriel whispered, "help me be brave." And then it happened. Gabriel touched his tongue to the batter and smiled, a small, shy smile, but genuine. "Guys," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with surprise, "I like chocolate." "I really like chocolate, not fear." Helena and Richard exchanged an emotional hug behind Gabriel, tears of relief streaming down both their faces. It was a small victory in practical terms, just a lick of raw batter, but gigantic in emotional terms. "How do you feel, my love?" Richard asked, his voice choked with emotion. "I feel alive." Gabriel danced a little joy dance around the kitchen. "It's like a switch turned on inside me." But the joy was temporarily interrupted by a disturbing realization. When the cake was in the oven, filling the house with the heavenly aroma that Gabriel remembered so well, he suddenly sat on the floor and began to cry. "Gabriel, what happened, my dear?" Helena knelt beside him, worried. I remembered something terrible," Gabriel sobbed. "In the last days of Mom in the hospital, she asked me to make chocolate truffles together when she came home. I promised I would. But she never came back, and I never made the chocolate truffles." The confession revealed a layer of guilt that no one had suspected. Gabriel was not only dealing with the loss of his mother, but also with the feeling of having broken an important promise. "Gabriel, look at me." Helena gently held the boy's face in her hands. "Your mom knew you were just a child. She never expected you to keep that promise alone." "But I promised!" "And you can still fulfill it," Richard said, surprising himself with the clarity of the solution. "We can make the chocolate truffles together in her honor. Wouldn't that be a beautiful way to honor your mom's memory?" Gabriel stopped crying, considering the proposal. "Do you think she would be happy?" "I'm absolutely sure," Helena replied. "And you know what else? We can make special chocolate truffles with ingredients that represent all the good things you shared." In the afternoon, after the chocolate cake was ready and the whole house was scented with its comforting aroma, Gabriel made a surprising decision. He wanted to eat a small piece of the cake. "But I want to eat it here, in our special kitchen, with both of you with me," he set his conditions. The moment was ceremonial. Helena cut a small slice, the perfect size for a 7-year-old. Richard sat beside his son and Helena on the other side. Gabriel held the fork, looking at the piece of cake as if it were a precious treasure. "To Mom," said Gabriel, raising the fork as if it were a toast. "To Caroline," echoed Helena and Richard in unison. Gabriel took the first piece to his mouth and chewed slowly, savoring not only the chocolate, but also the victory over his fears. "It's exactly how I remembered," he said, with tears of joy in his eyes. "It smells and tastes like heaven." He managed to eat almost half of the slice before feeling satisfied, not from being full, but from being emotionally complete. It was more food than he had eaten in 3 weeks, but mainly it was the return of the joy of eating. "Helena," Gabriel said when they finished cleaning the kitchen, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, my angel." "I think my mom sent you to take care of me. Not just you, but also this kitchen and these happy days, and even the courage to eat again." Gabriel hugged Helena tightly. "Thank you for helping me remember that I can be happy without forgetting her." That night, Gabriel fell asleep with his stomach slightly fuller and his heart infinitely lighter. The chocolate cake had been more than a meal. It had been a healing ritual, a bridge between the painful past and a possible future. Helena wrote in her Notebook, complete breakthrough today. Gabriel understood that honoring Caroline's memory means living fully, not depriving himself of life. The fear still exists, but now it's manageable. True healing has begun. Richard, lying in his lonely bed, for the first time in months, managed to sleep without the overwhelming weight of guilt in his chest. His son was coming back, and he himself was learning to be a father in a completely new way, present, participative, and emotionally available. The 4th week of Helena's stay in the mansion brought a twist that no one could have predicted. It was a rainy Thursday when Patricia Henry, Ricardo's younger sister, landed at Los Angeles International Airport directly from London, where she had lived for 5 years, working as an international financial consultant. At 38, Patricia was an elegant and determined woman, with perfectly styled blonde hair and an analytical gaze that missed no detail. "Ricardo, I need to talk to you urgently," were her first words upon entering the mansion, still carrying her designer handbag. She had received worrying reports from family acquaintances about Gabriel's condition and decided to return to the U.S. to assess the situation personally. Gabriel, who was playing in the garden with Helena when Patricia arrived, watched his aunt through the window with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He vaguely remembered her as the serious aunt who always questioned everything and spoke in English on the phone. "Patricia, what a surprise! Why didn't you let me know you were coming?" Ricardo came down the stairs to greet his sister, but immediately noticed by her expression that this was not a social visit. "Because if I had let you know, you would have had time to prepare the scene." Patricia swept her gaze around the house, noting changes in the decor and catching different aromas coming from the kitchen. "Ricardo, I received very concerning information about Gabriel. I heard that he hasn't eaten in weeks and that you hired a housekeeper to deal with psychological issues." "Patricia, you don't understand the situation. Helena is not just a housekeeper. She is helping Gabriel in a way that no doctor has been able to." "Exactly. No doctor has been able to." Patricia dropped her bag on the sofa and turned to face her brother. "Ricardo, you are playing with my nephew's life. A 7-year-old child who is not eating properly needs professional medical intervention, not local folklore." Outside, Helena felt the tension beginning to build in the house, even without being able to hear the conversation. Gabriel, with the heightened sensitivity of a child who had learned to perceive conflicts among adults, looked visibly anxious. "Helena, why is my dad talking loudly with that lady?" "Sometimes adults have different opinions about things, sweetheart. But that doesn't mean something bad is going to happen." Helena gently held Gabriel's hand. "How about we keep taking care of the plants? They always calm us down." But the tranquility was short-lived. Patricia marched into the garden with the determination of someone used to solving complex problems in the corporate world. "Gabriel, my love." She knelt down to hug her nephew, who responded shyly. "Auntie came to visit you. I'm very worried about your health." "Hi, Aunt Patricia. I'm better now. Look." Gabriel proudly showed the lettuce sprouts they had planted. "I'm learning to cook with Helena." Patricia looked at Helena with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And you must be the cook?" "I'm Helena. Nice to meet you." Helena extended her hand but immediately sensed Ricardo's sister's defensive attitude. "Gabriel is making wonderful progress. Yesterday he ate an entire piece of chocolate cake." "A piece of cake in 3 weeks?" Patricia stood up, her voice laden with disbelief. "Do you think that's significant progress?" Gabriel felt the tension in the air and instinctively moved closer to Helena. It was exactly the kind of conflict between adults that made him anxious and caused him to shut down emotionally. "Mrs. Henry," Helena said calmly, "every child has their own healing time. Gabriel has gone through a very specific trauma that should be treated by qualified professionals, not by alternative methods." Patricia turned to Gabriel. "Sweetheart, I brought information about a specialized clinic in Switzerland. They treat children with eating disorders using the most advanced techniques in the world." Gabriel's eyes widened, alarmed. "A clinic? Am I going to have to leave?" "It's not leaving. It's going to get proper treatment," Patricia explained, trying to use a soothing tone. "But I don't want to go." I like it here. I like Helena. I like our special kitchen. Gabriel began to get agitated, his recent progress threatened by the possibility of a radical change. Ricardo appeared in the garden, clearly irritated. Patricia, please. We haven't discussed this yet. There's nothing to discuss, Ricardo. This situation has gone on long enough. Gabriel needs professional help, and you know it. Patricia pulled a tablet from her bag, showing information about the Swiss clinic. Look, specialized child psychiatrists, nutritionists, behavioral therapists, and away from family, away from home, away from everything that represents safety for him, Ricardo countered. The discussion escalated quickly, with Gabriel in the middle, watching the adults he loved fundamentally disagree about his future. Helena noticed that the child was beginning to show signs of regression. His hands trembled slightly, and he had pulled away from everyone, leaning against the rose bushes as if seeking protection. Please, Helena intervened, can you continue this conversation without Gabriel present? He's getting distressed. Of course, Patricia agreed. Gabriel, how about you go play in your room while the adults talk? No, Gabriel shouted unexpectedly. I want to stay. It's about me. I have the right to hear. The boy's emotional outburst momentarily silenced everyone. It was the first time in months that Gabriel had raised his voice or shown such assertiveness. Gabriel is right, Helena said gently. He is the most important person in this conversation. Patricia looked surprised at Helena, then at Gabriel, recognizing for the first time that she might have been underestimating her nephew's maturity. Aunt Patricia, Gabriel said, his voice trembling but determined, I know you care about me, but I don't want to go to a place far away. I'm getting better here with Helena, with Dad in our special kitchen. But sweetheart, you need to eat properly. You can't live on a piece of cake a week. I know! And I will eat more. Yesterday I tried chocolate truffle dough. This morning I took a sip of banana smoothie, Gabriel said, looking at Helena for support. Helena is teaching me that I can eat slowly, at my own pace. Patricia remained silent for a long moment, processing her nephew's words. She had come prepared to find a sick child being neglected, but Gabriel seemed more articulate and aware than she expected. What if we brought in some specialists to work alongside Helena? Patricia suggested, trying to find a middle ground. As long as they don't change everything that's already working, Richard said firmly. Helena breathed a sigh of relief. It was a proposal that could work, as long as the specialists respected the progress already made and didn't try to impose completely different methods. Can I suggest something? Helena said. How about we observe Gabriel for another week before making any drastic decisions? Mrs. Johnson can see for herself how he is progressing. Gabriel nodded vigorously. Yes, Aunt Patricia, stay here and see how much better I am. Tomorrow I'm going to make chocolate truffles, the ones I promised to Mom. The mention of the promise to Caroline touched Patricia unexpectedly. She remembered how her sister-in-law always spoke about the importance of respecting children's emotional timing. All right, Patricia agreed, 1 week, but I want to be involved in everything closely. That night, after Gabriel fell asleep, the 3 adults gathered in the living room for an honest conversation. Patricia had spent the day discreetly observing Gabriel's routine, and despite her initial reservations, she couldn't deny that her nephew seemed calmer and more engaged than she expected. Helena, Patricia said, I need to admit that maybe I came with biases, but I still believe Gabriel needs professional medical support. I completely agree, Helena replied, surprising Patricia. I never said traditional methods aren't important. I just believe they work better when the child is emotionally receptive. And you've achieved that, Patricia admitted reluctantly. Richard observed the conversation, relieved to see that the 2 most important women in Gabriel's life were finding common ground. So are we in agreement? A week of observation, and then we decide together? Agreed, said Patricia. But if Gabriel regresses or shows signs of worsening, he won't regress, Helena asserted confidently. In fact, I think having you here might even speed up his recovery. Gabriel needs to feel that the whole family is united in supporting him. Patricia's unexpected arrival, which initially seemed a threat to Gabriel's progress, was turning into an opportunity to further strengthen the boy's support system. It was yet another lesson on how seemingly negative situations can become catalysts for growth when faced with dialogue and an open mind. The week of observation that Patricia had proposed turned into a period of surprising revelations for the entire Henry family. On Friday morning, the first day of evaluation, Gabriel woke up determined to show his aunt all the progress he had made. He rushed down to the experimental kitchen, where he found Helena preparing the ingredients for the promised chocolate truffles, those he had vowed to make for his mother before she passed away. "Helena, today is the day," Gabriel announced, proudly wearing his colorful apron. "I'm going to make Mom's chocolate truffles and keep my promise." Patricia, who had woken up early due to the time zone difference, discreetly observed from the kitchen door. She had spent the night reflecting on her expectations and biases, preparing to give Helena's methods a genuine chance. "Good morning, Aunt Patricia." Gabriel waved cheerfully. "Do you want to help make chocolate truffles?" Helena said it's better when more people put love into the recipe. "Of course, Gabriel. It would be an honor." Patricia approached, genuinely touched by the invitation. It was the first time in years that her nephew had spontaneously included her in an activity. Helena smiled, recognizing the opportunity to show Patricia how Gabriel had evolved. "How about Gabriel being our head chef today? He knows the recipe by heart and can teach us." During the preparation of the chocolate truffles, Patricia was impressed by several things: Gabriel's confidence in handling the ingredients, his detailed knowledge about textures and cooking points, and most importantly, his genuine joy in cooking. The boy she expected to find fragile and traumatized was actually confident and articulate. "Aunt Patricia, did you know that each chocolate truffle needs exactly 15 stirs to be just right?" Gabriel demonstrated his technique, stirring the sweet mixture over low heat. "Mom taught me that cooking is about patience and love, not about rushing." "Where did you learn that, Gabriel?" Patricia knelt to be at her nephew's level. "Helena helped me remember. She said all of Mom's lessons are stored right here." Gabriel touched his chest. "And that I just needed the courage to open the treasure chest of good memories." When the chocolate truffles were ready, Gabriel did something that surprised everyone present. He ate 2 whole truffles, savoring each bite and describing the flavors with impressive eloquence for a 7-year-old. "Guys, it tastes like chocolate, like sweetened condensed milk, but it also tastes like happy nostalgia," Gabriel said, licking his fingers. "It's like Mom is here with me, keeping me company." Patricia felt involuntary tears rolling down her face. She had come prepared to find a sick child in urgent need of medical intervention, but she was witnessing a healing process in progress, guided by wisdom and love. During lunch that day, Gabriel surprised everyone by agreeing to try small portions of all the dishes Mrs. Johnson had prepared. He didn't eat everything, but he sampled rice, beans, grilled chicken, and salad, commenting on each flavor like a little food critic. "Dr. Richard," Patricia said when the two were alone in the afternoon, "I need to apologize to you. I came here thinking you were being negligent, but in reality, you found exactly what Gabriel needed." "Patricia, you were worried about your nephew." "That's understandable," Richard replied, but there was visible relief in her voice. "And you know what else? Your presence here is doing wonders for Gabriel. He wants to show you that he is strong. But Richard, I still think he should have regular medical supervision. Helena did an amazing job, but Gabriel needs professional nutritional and psychological monitoring." "I completely agree. In fact, Helena always suggested that. She never wanted to replace the doctors, just create conditions for Gabriel to be receptive to treatment." On Tuesday of the observation week, Patricia had a revealing conversation with Gabriel that completely changed her perspective on the situation. "Gabriel, can I ask you an important question?" She sat next to her nephew in the garden, where he was tending to his plants. "Of course, Aunt." "How do you feel now compared to a few weeks ago?" Gabriel stopped watering the plants and seriously reflected on the question. Before, I felt like I was inside a dark bubble, Aunt. Everything was scary, especially food. I wanted to eat, but my body wouldn't let me. And now? Now I feel like these plants. Gabriel pointed to the green sprouts growing vigorously. I'm growing again, learning new things, creating strong roots. And Helena? How did she help you? Helena didn't try to force me to be different, Aunt. She taught me that I could be sad about Mom, but I could also be happy in other ways. Gabriel sat on the grass. And you know what's even cooler? Dad is different too. He plays with me now, gets dirty with soil, laughs at my jokes. Patricia looked at the house, where she could see Richard in the experimental kitchen helping Helena prepare dinner. There was a lightness in her brother that she hadn't seen in years, long before Caroline's death. Gabriel, do you still get sad sometimes? I do. Sometimes I cry because I miss Mom. But Helena taught me that crying isn't bad. It's the heart washing away the pain to make room for good things. On Wednesday, Patricia made a decision that surprised everyone. She cancelled the proposal from the Swiss clinic and instead offered to help structure a multidisciplinary medical follow-up in Phoenix, allowing Gabriel to continue at home with Helena. I've already contacted some of the best specialists in the city, she announced during dinner. A pediatric nutritionist, a psychologist specializing in childhood grief, and a pediatrician who works with integrative approaches. Does that mean I can stay here? With Helena? Gabriel asked, clearly anxious for the answer. It means you will have the best of both worlds, dear. The care and wisdom of Helena, plus the scientific support that will ensure you grow strong and healthy. Gabriel jumped out of his chair and hugged his aunt tightly. Thank you, Aunt Patricia. You are the best aunt in the world. On Thursday, Helena made a revelation that caught the whole family by surprise. During dinner, when Gabriel excitedly talked about a new recipe he wanted to try, she gently interrupted. Everyone, I need to tell you something important. Helena took a deep breath, carefully choosing her words. I received a very good job offer in Phoenix. A family that has a child with similar issues to what Gabriel had. The silence that followed was heavy. Gabriel stopped eating, his eyes instantly filling with tears. Helena, are you leaving? His voice was a desperate whisper. I haven't decided yet, my angel. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Richard felt the world collapse again. How could he allow Helena to leave just when Gabriel was recovering? But at the same time, he knew he couldn't be selfish and prevent her from helping other children. Helena, said Patricia, can I ask a direct question? What would make you want to stay here? Helena looked around the table, seeing the faces of people who had become more than employers. They had become family. Honestly, knowing that Gabriel really doesn't need me anymore. That you, as a family, are ready to continue this journey on your own. But I still need you. Gabriel stood up from his chair, clearly distressed. What if I can't eat again? What if I forget everything you taught me? Helena knelt beside Gabriel's chair, holding his small hands. Gabriel, my dear, do you think everything you learned will go away if I'm not here? Gabriel reflected for a moment. No, I don't think so. But I will miss you. And I will miss you too. But you know what else? The love we built will never go away. And all the recipes, all the conversations, all the courage you found, that's yours forever. On Friday, the last day of the observation week, Gabriel made a decision that surprised all the adults. He called a family meeting in the experimental kitchen and presented his own proposal. I've thought a lot about Helena leaving, Gabriel began, with impressive seriousness for his age. And I think she should go help another child. Gabriel! Richard was surprised by his son's maturity. Dad, I'm better now. Not 100% better, but much better. And there's a child somewhere who is like I was, scared, sad, unable to eat. Gabriel looked at Helena. If you stay here forever, that child will keep suffering. Helena felt tears welling up in her eyes. The boy who had come to her as a haunted shadow was showing extraordinary generosity and maturity. But, Gabriel continued, there's one condition. Helena has to promise to come back to visit us. And she will teach me how to do video calls for when I need a new recipe or when I'm feeling sad. That's a very wise agreement, said Patricia, admiring her nephew's perspective. "And I promise," said Helena, "that even from afar you will always be able to count on me. Gabriel, you have become very special. It feels like I have gained a grandson from the heart." That night, while Gabriel slept peacefully, Richard, Patricia, and Helena made the final adjustments to the treatment continuity plan. Gabriel had evolved from a traumatized child who rejected any food to a confident boy who ate regularly, cooked with joy, and processed his grief in a healthy way. The decision week had ended with a resolution that no one had anticipated. But it turned out to be perfect. Gabriel would continue at home with professional medical supervision. Helena would leave to help another family, but would remain emotionally connected. And the Henry family had grown stronger in a way they never thought possible. The Sunday that would mark Helena's farewell dawned with a crystal blue sky, as if time itself conspired to make it a special day. Gabriel had woken up before the sun and spent an hour in the garden, gathering fresh ingredients for what he had decided to call the gratitude dinner, a complete meal that he would prepare for the whole family, including Mrs. Johnson. To show that he was truly healed. "Helena, look, what I gathered for today." Gabriel entered the kitchen carrying a wicker basket full of fresh herbs, ripe cherry tomatoes, and crisp lettuce. His eyes sparkled with a confidence that hadn't existed 2 months ago. "Basil for the pasta sauce, thyme for the chicken, and mint for the special tea I'm going to make for dessert." Helena smiled, watching the boy who had transformed completely. The Gabriel of today was articulate, self-assured, and most importantly, nurtured a healthy and joyful relationship with food. "What an organized chef! And what will be the complete menu for our farewell dinner?" Appetizer, bruschetta with tomato and basil. Main course, pasta with homemade tomato sauce and grilled chicken with herbs. Side dish, mixed salad. And dessert, special chocolate truffles from Mum's memory, but with a new twist that I invented. Gabriel recited the menu like a true professional chef. Richard, who was watching the scene leaning against the doorframe, felt a mix of pride and melancholy. Pride for his son's incredible transformation, and melancholy because he knew this would be one of the last moments with Helena as an integral part of their daily lives. "Can I be the chef's assistant today?" Richard asked, moving closer to the counter. "Of course, Dad! But you have to follow my instructions carefully." Gabriel took on the role of kitchen leader completely, guiding each step of the preparation with the confidence of someone who had found his passion. Patricia came down for breakfast and found the experimental kitchen in full swing. Gabriel was patiently explaining to his father how to properly peel tomatoes, while Helena watched with the proud smile of someone who had fulfilled her mission. "Good morning, chefs. Can I help with anything?" offered Patricia. "Aunt Patricia, you can be in charge of the table decoration," Gabriel delegated. "I want you to use the flowers that Mom planted, but in a cheerful way, not a sad one. This dinner is to celebrate. Adries throughout the morning, the house filled with delicious aromas and the sound of lively conversations coming from the kitchen. Gabriel was in his element, tasting spices, adjusting flavors, and telling stories about each dish he prepared. "You know, Helena, this tomato sauce has a secret ingredient," Gabriel said, stirring the pot with precise movements. "Besides the fresh tomatoes and basil, I added a pinch of sugar, just like Mum used to do, and also a teaspoon of concentrated love." Concentrated love. Helena laughed, intrigued. "It's when we cook thinking of all the good people in our lives. Then the food tastes like affection." In the afternoon, when the preparations were almost finished, Gabriel asked to have a private conversation with Helena in the garden. They sat on the wooden bench that Richard had installed near Caroline's rose bushes. "Helena, I want to thank you for something very important," Gabriel began, his words carefully chosen. "You not only taught me to eat again, you taught me that I can miss Mom and still be happy." Helena felt a lump in her throat. "Gabriel, you were the bravest student I ever had. You taught me a lot too. What did I teach you? That true healing doesn't come from forcing changes, but from creating safe spaces where a person can choose to change." Helena stroked the boy's hair. and that a mother's love never dies, it just transforms into other forms of care. Helena, can I tell you a secret? Always, my angel. I still get a little scared sometimes. Not scared of eating, but scared of forgetting Mom's voice, her scent, her hugs. Helena nodded, understanding perfectly. And how do you deal with that fear? I cook something she liked, and then I feel like she's close again. It's like the recipes are letters she left for me. At 6 in the evening, the dining room table was set with the elegance of a 5-star restaurant, but with the warmth of a family dinner. Gabriel had insisted on using Caroline's special china, white porcelain plates with golden edges that were only used on very special occasions. Everyone, before we start, I would like to make a toast, Gabriel announced, standing up from his chair with a glass of grape juice in hand. This dinner is to thank Helena for teaching me that food is love, and also to celebrate that our family has learned to be happy again. Everyone raised their glasses, their eyes misty with emotion. To Helena, who brought joy back to our home, Richard said. To Gabriel, who taught us about courage, added Patricia. To the Henry family, who allowed me to be part of one of the most special experiences of my life, Helena concluded. And to Mom, Gabriel finished, looking up, who sent the Helena to take care of us. During dinner, Gabriel not only showed that he had completely regained his appetite, but that he had developed a sophisticated palate and a genuinely pleasurable relationship with food. He savored each dish he had prepared, describing flavors and textures with the enthusiasm of a true young gourmet. Guys, try the bruschetta. The tomato is at the perfect acidity level, and the basil adds that touch of freshness that balances with the crunchiness of the bread, Gabriel commented. Sounding like a professional food critic, Mrs. Johnson, who had been invited to join the dinner as a family member, couldn't stop smiling. In all my years working here, I've never seen such a beautiful transformation. Gabriel, you've become a real little chef. When dessert time arrived, Gabriel presented his special creation, traditional chocolate truffles made with Caroline's recipe but decorated with edible flowers he had learned to prepare. A perfect fusion of tradition and innovation. These chocolate truffles represent how I feel now, Gabriel explained as he served dessert. They taste like the good memories of Mom, but they also have new things I've learned. It's the past and the future together in the same sweet. After dinner, the family gathered in the living room, where Gabriel had prepared one last surprise. He approached Caroline's grand piano and, with small but determined fingers, played a simplified version of Für Elise, the music his mother always played for him before bed. I learned to play by myself, Gabriel said when he finished. I wanted to play a song from Mom for Helena to carry in her heart. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The simple music, played with love by a 7-year-old boy who had found his inner strength, represented the complete healing not only of Gabriel, but of the entire family. Gabrielle, said Helena, kneeling beside the piano, this was the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me. I will keep this music in my heart forever. On Monday morning, when the time for the real goodbye came, Gabriel was surprisingly serene. He had prepared a small bag with gifts for Helena, the notebook where he had written down his favorite recipes, a jar of concentrated love, actually a mix of dried herbs from the garden, and a photo of the family taken the day before. Helena, promise you'll use these recipes with the new child you're going to help? Gabriel asked, handing over the gifts. I promise, my chef. And I also promise that I will tell her about a very brave boy from Los Angeles who taught me that healing happens when we are patient with our own heart. And you promise you'll come back to visit me? I promise. And you promise you'll keep cooking, experimenting with new flavors, and being happy? I promise. When the car that would take Helena finally left, Gabriel did not cry. Instead, he waved from the window until he lost sight of her, then headed to the experimental kitchen, where he began preparing lunch for the family. Dad, Aunt Caroline, how about we make Mexican tacos today? I want to try new spices, Gabriel announced, already wearing his colorful apron. Richard and Caroline exchanged a look of admiration. The boy who 2 months earlier couldn't eat any food was now proposing international culinary adventures. 6 months later, Gabriel had become a little culinary celebrity at school, teaching classmates how to prepare healthy snacks and organizing cooking workshops on weekends. He kept in regular contact with Helena through video calls, where they shared recipes and stories. Richard had completely transformed his relationship with work, prioritizing family moments and discovering that being a present father was more rewarding than any business success. He and Gabriel had developed a tradition of cooking together every Sunday, exploring cuisines from different countries. Caroline decided to move back to the United States permanently, taking over the management of the company so Richard could have more flexibility. She discovered that being a present aunt was a transformative experience and that family was more important than an international career. The experimental kitchen had become the heart of the home, where Gabriel created new recipes, welcomed friends for gastronomic labs, and most importantly, where the family gathered daily for meals filled with conversation, laughter, and love. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, while they prepared a chocolate cake together, the same one that marked the beginning of Gabriel's recovery, Richard watched his son patiently explain to a little friend how to incorporate the ingredients with care. "You know, Dad," Gabriel said, not taking his eyes off the batter he was mixing, "I think Mom would be proud to see how our family has learned to be happy again, but without forgetting her." "I'm sure she would be, son. I'm sure she would be." And in the garden, Caroline's rose bushes bloomed more vibrantly than ever, as if silently approving the transformation of that family that had learned that true love does not fade with death. It only transforms into new forms of care, growth, and hope. Please like, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and if you watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and leave your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's very emotional.